The UFC is in serious trouble. Recent financial news has fighters talking, and I think this could be the start of a revolution among UFC fighters, and I want to talk all about it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is MMA365, the greatest UFC news YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe, especially because Yuri Prohaska is offering Hot Pockets to the Wise Beaver, and in order to find out more information about this beaver's taste preferences, we need you to hit that subscribe button. About 92% of you are not subscribed to the channel, so if you're a viewer and you enjoy this type of content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps me out. Thank you. So, I want to talk about this. It just released a few hours ago. UFC and TKO Holdings as a whole has released their earnings report, and UFC revenue grew 7% in the fiscal year of 2025, $96 million. So it's pretty good. Mostly partnerships, a little bit of events and hospitality, but the main thing I want to talk about here is this right here. Adjusted EBITDA. It's been a while since I said that. EBITDA. Earnings before interest, taxes, debt, and amortization. I majored in business, guys. At a margin of 57%, which is an extremely high ratio. Essentially, that they're making their earnings are 57% higher than what they spend. That's a huge profit. And the reason why we're talking about this is because news came out that Zuffa Boxing, which is under TKO Holdings, subsidiary of the UFC, word got out that they're paying a boxer, $15 million for one fight, which is kind of insane. And the UFC or TKO Holdings certainly has the money to do it, but fighters got word of this, and many of them are not pleased. Specifically, Sean O'Malley said, "I've never heard of him. It's crazy how you put in so much work in the UFC. You build this name, build this character, be a star. He's not making $15 million to fight." And again, I think part of this is a simple matter of supply and demand or competition. I mean, if you're a mixed martial artist, the UFC is pretty much a monopoly at this point on the sport. Whereas boxing, you do have a variety of promotions. So, therefore, if you're going to want to land a fighter, then you are going to need to pay a hefty sum. But still, $15 million is an insane amount of money for a boxer that I haven't heard of. You probably haven't heard of. I think his name is Connor Gunn, something like that. Um, Not to out myself as a casual, but the UFC fighters are putting their entire body on the line. It's kind of insane to see this astronomically high number on one athlete for one fight. I believe it's one fight. So, yeah, fighters heard this and they're not pleased. Michael Page also said that he is unhappy with this latest news, and it kind of just strikes me as a questionable use of financial allocation. Um, I mean, is this really the best way to spend $15 million on a brand new boxing promotion, whereas you have a ton of talented, entertaining UFC fighters on the roster, or on the cusp of being on the roster, who still work day jobs because they don't earn enough in the UFC to actually train full time. Kind of insane to think about. Terence Crawford, the boxer, also spoke up, and he said, "This comes to these combat sports, it's got to come from the fighters, just like boxing. If the fighters come together, they can make anything happen." So, yeah, I mean, seemingly a lot of UFC fighters are upset at this news. Again, in a vacuum, the UFC is doing great. If you only look at the financial statement, the UFC is doing wonderful, or TKO Holdings is doing wonderful. However, there are two things I want to point out. Number one, it is rumored that the UFC does have its fair share of debt because it's been bought and sold several times over. So that has probably accumulated over the years. So those revenue numbers may not be as flattering as it seems. But the other thing that I want to point out, outside of debt, where is all of that money going? Because it isn't really going to the fighters. The only pay increase that has been announced in any form since the new Paramount deal was an increase to fighter bonuses and a bonus if you get a finish, no matter what. But still, this is like we're talking billions of dollars here with a B, and fighters, as far as we know, are still on base level contracts when they're entering the UFC of $10,000 to show and $10,000 to win. You do the math, even if you win 2 fights in a year, that's $40,000. That isn't exactly a very high salary, especially for a professional athlete who's putting their body on the line. Mixed martial arts is as brutal as it can get. That's one of the reasons why I love it. That's one of the reasons why you probably love it too. $40,000 for putting your body on the line, getting hit in the head repeatedly, it's kind of insane. So I just don't exactly understand where there's dozens of millions of dollars, maybe even more, that isn't getting reflected in UFC fighter pay, but that money exists. We know it exists because they published it. So is that money really going to one boxer? That's kind of insane if true. I mean, if you disperse $15 million among UFC fighters, that would go a long way. Um, so I see this and I'm just baffled. And I imagine many UFC fighters are as well. And it's starting serious conversations about how much better we fight for. You know, we complain about fighter pay, but what are we going to do about it? What are our options? And it's hard in the UFC because you're ultimately under a contract and you are probably gonna make more money in the UFC than you will in another promotion. But how much better can things really get? Because the money exists, but how can fighters secure a greater share of that revenue? That's a big picture question for UFC fighters or maybe a union representative to figure out. As it stands, UFC fighters are not unionized. I think that could be a good place to start, although it would take a lot of momentum. I mean, Francis Ngannou was let go from the UFC for trying to negotiate a higher salary. So it would take a serious contingent group of fighters among the top of the rankings to actually establish leverage here. But I'm really intrigued if this whole debacle can spark serious questions about increasing fighter pay moving forward. I think it's a good idea. I really do. That'll conclude this video for now. Be sure to subscribe to help out Yuri Prohaska and the Wise Beaver. It's very important that you hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching.